Hi everyone. So this week what I want you to do is look at the witness blanket. So there are three objectives to this lecture and three objectives for your week. One is a podcast with a short article. The podcast is with CBC's Unreserved and it is hosted by Rosanna Deerchild. It is a very short podcast. I think it's just shy of 11 minutes, and it's bearing witness, artist turns gathered objects into monument to residential school survivors. Witness blanket melds 800 plus residential school artifacts, and that's from an article by, it's in Canadian Art. Leah Sandals, I think is her name. We'll see it shortly. And I'm giving you extra time this week to go through the witness blanket. There is a link to the website on Moodle, and it is an interactive experience. So I'm giving you extra time because this is a difficult thing to go through. We are looking at artifacts from the residential schools and the residential school survivors. So I don't expect you to be able to sit down and just go through the witness blanket, the interactive experience, just at one go. It may take you, 3 or 4 times in like little 15-minute intervals. So this is a section of the witness blanket. So after the Truth and Reconciliation Commission called for a commemoration initiative, master carver and artist, his name is Kerry Newman, and he created the witness blanket. He has indicated he spent about 4 months thinking about what he wanted to submit, and he eventually chose to gather pieces from residential schools, and so that he could make a blanket out of them. And we've discussed blankets quite a bit, and I also refer to this installation or sculpture or material blanket in last week's lecture on Gregory Schofield's poem, This Is My Blanket. So you're actually not unfamiliar with this piece of art. This piece is comprised of old bricks, doorknobs, braids of hair, rusted latches, nails, little badges from a variety of things, photographs. Here you can see a diploma. So it's really gathered from, there are ice skates. It's gathered from a variety of pieces of material. The installation measures 12 meters long and was assembled from 600 objects and belongings. So Kerry Newman's goal in this project is healing. He wanted to heal himself, his family. His father is a survivor of the residential schools, and all of us affected by residential schools. And so that refers to everyone in Canada. We are, as a nation, profoundly affected by the residential schools. So what is most important with this project, in my view, is its commemorative value. The fact that it carries the survivors of the residential school system into the future, and it carries even those who did not survive into the future, their memory, their legacy. So we cannot forget any student that went into the system, whether they were able to leave it alive, healthy, leave it traumatized, or not get out of it, that this cannot be forgotten. So to me, that is the real value of the witness blanket, that it is a living monument of what happened in the residential schools. So Rosanna Deerchild indicates that from a distance, the witness blanket looks like a piece of quilt. It has those familiar shapes of diamonds and stars. However, as she indicates in her podcast, Bearing Witness, Artist Turns Gathered Objects into Monument to Residential School Survivors, She indicates that as you step closer, you can see that this blanket is woven together with archival objects from residential schools and its survivors. And also from survivors, we'll hear about a shoe that one survivor happened to come across. They specifically draw attention to this in both pieces of materials we're looking at. So Carrie Newman's father, as I mentioned, is a residential school survivor, and in 2010, the TRC, that's the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, asked for commemorative pieces of work, and Newman wanted to create something. And the podcast indicates, Rosanna Deerchild indicates that Newman is a carver, and he eventually says he came to the idea of assembling objects, and he thought of compiling them into a blanket. And he indicates that he had a wonderful team that helped him in traveling across Canada and asking for pieces from survivors. Newman says that they spoke to over 10,000 people in between 75 to 80 communities across Canada. He indicates that Rosie Hartman brought back a child's shoe from Carcross in the Yukon Territories. Rosie and her husband had the same dream regarding the shoe or after having found it, and feel that the shoe resonates with memory. And Newman talks about feeling overwhelmed by his emotions of holding the shoe, and he indicates he spoke directly to the object, and it is at that moment that he began to understand the sacredness he was undertaking with this project. So again, this podcast is really short. It's like around 11 minutes, and it's just a discussion with Carrie Newman. Newman indicates that he felt at times daunted and overwhelmed by the collection of objects, that he took inventory, measurements, and began the work of puzzling these pieces together. Newman indicates the power of this project is the timeliness. He believes that every year we lose residential school survivors and residential schools themselves as they are being dismantled and torn down. So he's indicating that this installation or sculpture or the witness blanket is very important in that it is a concrete, tangible reminder and memory. He goes on to say that this project was healing to himself and his family, and it brought himself and his father closer together. He refers to, in the podcast, he refers to this work as transformative, and the realization of how well planned and well executed the residential school systems were. And he believes it's important to understand that the propaganda may be that residential school systems were well intentioned, but he believes that when you visit these sites, when you see even their floor plans, as he says, and he hopes that when you witness the witness blanket, you will hopefully see how well planned the dismantling of families, of cultures, and of communities was with the residential school system, and that you will understand that the residential school systems were in place to annihilate culture, language, family, community, individuals, and there's no room in that, all that careful planning, to read into this as good intentions. The witness, and we're moving away from the podcast into Leah Sandel's article for Canadian Art, and it appeared the 31st of May 2016. And this is just a summary of her article, which I think is sometimes the best way to discuss certain things. It's just like, here is the whole of this thing that we are looking at. So, and you'll notice that I do what we're always supposed to do in summaries: name, article title, date, and then what this article is about. I'm not going to read it to you just because you can pause this and you can read it yourself, but this is a summary of her article in Canadian Art. I do want to look at some terms and definitions. I've been talking a lot about artifacts, and that just is referring to an object made by a human being, and it is an item of cultural or historical interest. That's all I mean by artifact. Sandals does use the term visual fulcrum, and this just refers, it's an art terminology that refers to the balancing center of a piece of artwork. And here I am showing you a famous sculpture of Louis Riel by Morcien Lemay. I have the most Anglo tongue in the world, so please forgive me for butchering the French language. I want you to know the outer kind of cylinder sphere surrounding this sculpture was created by an architect, not by the artist. So these portions here, created by an architect, and this sculpture here in the center, in the fulcrum, so this is the fulcrum of this piece. This was created by the sculptor Lemay. So I wanted us to just look at, there are a few moments in her article I wanted us to look at. She talks about the year-long process, the 200,000 kilometers traveled to obtain these objects for the witness blanket. And again, she talks about the children's shoe, and we heard about that. I believe it's in the podcast as well. This children's shoe was found by Harold Gattensby, so we get a little more information here. And he was a survivor of the Carcross Residential School, and Carcross is located kind of right at the border of BC and the Yukon Territory. He was touring, and this is her quote, I'm quoting her from paragraph 68, he was touring the site of the original school. I would probably personally not use the word touring, but in any event. Newman also, of course, discusses the importance, again, of the shoe and how he started realizing that he might have delicate textile things to include, and that he really needed to really think about how he was going to include all of the items and the variety of items that he anticipated getting. That I don't think he had anticipated that prior to being given the child's shoe. And then she indicates that the shoe is displayed behind plexiglass. And in the words of the Witness Blanket website, which hopefully you will all make sure that you carefully look at, wrapped with a braid of sweetgrass surrounded by sage, which are traditional medicines, and bound with red cloth, a symbol of healing and protection. So there is, I hope that you are understanding the power of an artifact, of an object, of a thing, which we will return to again throughout our course, just what an object can mean, how it resonates. So in paragraph 9, she talks about there is a door, and it is at the fulcrum, so it's kind of a central object, as she indicates. The door also serves as a frame for original artwork by the artist George Littlechild. And George Littlechild's uncle was attended St. Michael's, which is where the door came from. And George Littlechild's uncle was abused at St. Michael's. So in a way, what we're seeing is George Littlechild working with this door and trying to heal and understand and touch and through objects, through these artifacts from the residential school itself. This is the Carcross Residential School. This is it, obviously, when it was standing. That was not a very good color to pick. And it caught fire. And of course, here's a map. You may all remember I'm a little obsessed with maps. And here is Carcross, as I indicated, right at the border there of BC and the Yukon Territory. And this is St. Michael's, which is where the door came from, that George Littlechild built some art around. And Alert Bay is in British Columbia, and it's right here, as you can see. And this is St. Michael's Residential School. Here it is from one angle, so that Alert Bay is known for totem poles at one time. Most of them were stolen. And this is the residential school, which is absolutely massive. And here it is being torn down. So this is near the close of her article. It's paragraph 12. And here Newman, the artist, is just indicating that nearly all of the artifacts in his installation are coming, from the witness blanket, are coming from the 142 residential schools that were covered by the Truth and Reconciliation Commission agreement. And he's also indicating that he's included some artifacts that were not covered by the TRC. So this is, as Sandals indicates, just a remarkable feat of collecting and of collective generosity. So please be sure to go through the interactive website of the witness blanket. This is, and I understand that this is not easy, and it isn't easy. You know, and I'm going to say this because I think it's really important. It shouldn't be easy. The residential schools are a part of Canadian history. They are a thing that every Canadian person is burdened by. And that burden cannot be shirked. It has to be carried. And one way of eventually understanding it, of being able to process it, is through conversation, is through this piece of art, is through readings, is through listening to the survivors and their stories. So that is imperative. You know, the way that we can unburden ourselves is through communication. And that is what the witness blanket is doing. So I know it's difficult, and I think it's imperative to really look at this and consider it, and as difficult as it may be. So thank you, and thank you for listening to the podcast, for reading the article, for you know, embarking upon this course that is sometimes difficult, and I imagine for many of you sometimes uncomfortable. But there is so much value in this. I'm going to stop because I'm going to start ranting. But really, guys, there is just so much value in this work. This is how we as people, as Canadian people, can heal and can come together. And yeah, so thank you. Thank you all so much. And I will see you later. And if you have any questions or concerns, remember Wednesday, 11 to 1, office hours. Okay, bye.